everybody. I'm going to take a second to set up Instagram. All right. Hi, everybody, and welcome to my Talk Shop Live. Thank you guys so much for jumping in. I have a special treat today from my new book, The New Autoimmune Protocol, which is the updated guidebook for the Autoimmune Protocol. And I'm going to be making my vanilla tahini cookies. I'm going to show you the picture right here, but I've actually got my oven preheating right now, and I've got some of the ingredients. So I just want to let you guys know that today I am selling bookplate signed copies of the new Autoimmune Protocol. If you guys want to order a copy, all you have to do is click the shop button if you are on TalkShop, and if you are on Facebook or Instagram, just comment shop and you will get a DM link with the ability to order the signed copy. And then if you're on YouTube, click the link in the description. So I hope you guys can pick up a copy, and I'm going to be demoing this awesome recipe. So the Autoimmune Protocol has been updated with this book to include 2 pathways to elimination. And if you're unfamiliar with AIP, it is a elimination and reintroduction protocol that people with autoimmune disease and chronic health issues can use to identify which foods they are sensitive to or what are triggering their symptoms. So it's not a diet in the classic sense, but really a protocol that you use to learn your individual way of eating that supports your best health. And so with these 2 pathways, we have core AIP, which is kind of the original autoimmune protocol that's been around for about 15 years. And in this new book, I've also included modified AIP, which is a second pathway that has a few extra ingredients. And so today I chose a recipe to show you guys that actually complies with the modified protocol, because compared to the original core AIP, where we remove grains, legumes, eggs, nuts, seeds, and nightshades, which I know is a lot of foods, but those are common food sensitivities for people who have chronic illness. The modified protocol actually allows rice, legumes, seeds, and ghee. So just one type of dairy, but not others. And this is because these foods, in some of the medical research and practical experience and real world use, we've been using AIP now for 15 years. We found out that some of these ingredients actually really help people implement the protocol. So they make it a lot easier, they make it a lot more affordable, and they just make the diet a little more expanded. So these cookies are really fun to make. They only have a few ingredients. The flours are sweet white rice flour and tapioca flour. There's a little baking soda and salt to make it rise. And then in this bowl, I've got tahini butter. So tahini is basically ground sesame, and I'm just going to mix that up. I've also got maple syrup. So the only sweetener in here is maple syrup, the tahini butter, and then there's also a splash of vanilla. So I'm going to just get this nice and combined. Sometimes the tahini butter, I like to keep mine in the refrigerator. Yeah. And I'm going to pop this in with my flours. Now, if you guys are tuning in, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And I'm going to hand this over to my magical assistant off camera, Noah, who is trying very carefully not to show himself, but I have told him that he should come be a part of this. You're going to say hi? Hello. No, come on. I think you were on the Facebook, but not on the Instagram. So anyways, I'm just going to whip these up. And I really wanted to do a dessert because a lot of people, when they do elimination diets, they feel like they can't have something special or a treat. And of course, you know, we don't want to be eating tons of sugar, but I think that people on healing diets definitely there is space for having a little something sweet. And especially with this modified protocol, you can have some of the flavor. Like these cookies are really nice because they have that fat, they have some of the nutrients that are in, the sesame butter and the maple syrup. They're just really simple. They don't have a lot of ingredients. So now that I've got that combined into my cookie dough, I'm going to move my book here a little bit so I have a little more room to work. I am going to turn these into cookies, and I just roll them into a couple inch size balls, and I might need a little tapioca flour here because these are a little wetter than normal. So I'm just going to, that's going to be here. Yep, and if just open it up and put it on this plate. I knew I'd need an assist. And so if this ever happens to you when you're making cookies, you can use a little flour on your hands just to make it a little bit less sticky. And I'm going to roll these into maybe 1.5 inch, 2-inch balls and put them on a cookie sheet. And we're going to make about 2 dozen cookies. So, yeah, sure. I'm having, no, I'm good. Yeah. All right. So I've got some questions in the chat. I could use some help going and looking at that and maybe helping me pick out. Thank you guys so much for jumping on. This is really fun. Okay, scrolling to the top of the chat. No, keep going down if it's green. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy to see all of you guys on. This is really fun. Okay, my cousin has lupus. Lupus is an autoimmune disease, and the Autoimmune Protocol is created to help people with autoimmune disease identify their food-driven symptoms. And so I definitely think that this is something that could help them. How do you balance food as medicine with quality of life and sustainability? This is a really good question. And something that I really like to clarify is, this isn't replacing medical care. I think the autoimmune protocol has been studied clinically for different autoimmune conditions, but not as a replacement for traditional medical care, for something that you can use in addition to what you already do to manage your autoimmune disease. So that's something that I really love about diet and lifestyle. I personally have 3 autoimmune conditions. I had to think because I actually just recently got diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis, which I have been searching for that answer for about 15 years. But the Autoimmune Protocol really helped me identify my food allergies and sensitivities and figure out what works for me. Okay, I'm going to clean my hands a little bit, you guys. Because those cookies need to go in the oven. And here's this. All right, so these, I did not make them look perfect because I was working with you guys, but I've got some sesame seeds that I'm going to press them in here. Okay, so if you guys are shopping on TalkShop, you can comment or no, you can click the shop button. If you're watching on Facebook or Instagram, you can comment shop and you get a DM link to purchase a signed copy of the book. If you guys are on YouTube, you can look in the description and the link will be there. So I'm just going to pop these into the oven and cook them for 18 minutes. My buddy here is going to set a timer. And that's it. Those cookies are so easy to make, you guys, except your hands get kind of sticky. I probably should have thought of that before I did this. But anyways, now I'm going to move to the point where I just answer all your questions and drink tea and wait for the cookies to cook. Okay, so Kristen is asking, Mickey, for somebody brand new, what is the first small step you recommend starting the autoimmune protocol? Okay, so in this book, actually, I have updated a fully fleshed out brand new transition phase. So originally with the autoimmune protocol, the elimination phase, you found out about it and you were like, I'm going to do this. And you started maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks. And that's really hard because it doesn't really give you enough time to practice the skills needed to do an elimination protocol. Now, unlike a diet, the elimination protocol is something that you do for a short period of time, maybe 1 to 3 months is what I recommend. So you're really going to want to spend a lot of time figuring out how to sustainably stay on the protocol for that amount of time. So during transition, I like people to do a couple things. First, you want to track your symptoms because once you start making changes, and if things get, a lot of times they get better, but sometimes they can even get a little bit worse while your body is transitioning, you need a reliable record of how you're feeling. So during transition, I really recommend taking a good approach to baseline tracking, tracking all your symptoms. Just get a snapshot of what your health is like before you start. The second thing that I like to do is clarify your vision. Why are you doing this? Actually, what is your health vision? Which actually goes a lot deeper to just why you want to do the protocol, but kind of what health means to you. For me, health is really expressed when I'm able to spend time doing things and being with the people that I love. And I really like that expansive approach because as somebody who lives with autoimmune disease, I don't have to be in perfect health to be doing that all the time, but that is always a reminder for me why I am trying to take care of myself and chasing after feeling better because I just want more time with the people that I love. And so you might have a slightly different vision of health. And so clarifying that before you even go into it will really help you stay motivated. The third thing is what I call a confidence assessment. And I have a checklist in here for you to do this exercise where you basically take stock of all these areas of your life, like how much time you have to cook, what your cooking skills are, how much money you have to spend on groceries, what kind of support you have in your household, and what your needs are. And everybody coming to AIP kind of has a different setup and a different set of circumstances. And so figuring out which area is going to be a sticking point for you before you even start will help you then spend some time figuring out and troubleshooting. So if you're somebody that doesn't know how to cook, that's fine. There are so many resources, including my book, these recipes. I haven't even really talked about them yet, but the recipes are designed to set you up for success in just making really healthy, good food with not a lot of time, not any expensive equipment, and just get that good food on the table, even if you really don't have a lot of experience cooking. So hopefully, Kristen, that gives you some ideas for somebody that wants to start, kind of the things that you would think about before you jump in. Okay, Allison asks, what surprised you the most when updating the new autoimmune protocol compared to earlier versions? So like I mentioned before, the autoimmune protocol has been updated in the last couple years. And with this book, this is the very first formal publication of the modified protocol, which is brand new. And it came out of the research. So in the last decade, there has been medical research using the autoimmune protocol for conditions like IBD, which includes Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, eczema, and psoriasis. And what we learned in those studies was actually that people get results so quickly using AIP. So in IBD, 73% of patients with IBD reached clinical remission in just 6 weeks when they were still in the transition phase before they even hit the elimination diet. So if you guys want to read more about that, I just Google AIP medical research. There's so much information out there about it. But what you'll learn is that people actually experience results pretty quickly. And so what we wanted to do was make a second pathway that had foods included that don't tend to be triggers for most people so that it was easier and that people could potentially achieve those same results without having to go that hardcore with elimination. And it's not surprising to me because I have been coaching as a nutritionist for 15 years. I have been working with healthcare providers. I've trained over 1,000 providers in how to use the autoimmune protocol. And so all of this collective experience, being a part of the back end of the research and teaching, I'm not surprised because I know that people see results from some of the eliminations more than others. And so making that a formal release with this book is something that I'm really excited about, the whole community, because I'm excited that you guys can potentially get that same effect without having to restrict as many foods. Okay, so I'm just looking for another question. How do you know if AIP is working for you? This is from Leah. So something that we're looking for when you do the autoimmune protocol, again, this is not a forever diet. This is not a preventative diet. This is a protocol that you use for a short period of time, 3 to 6 months total, transition, elimination, reintroduction, 3 phases. You do this to identify the foods that help you feel well in your body with your complex arrangement of your autoimmune conditions or your chronic illness. And during the elimination phase, the goal is to experience a measurable improvement over your baseline. So if your baseline was, you track your symptoms and you're on a 1 to 10 scale, let's say fatigue. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Let's say fatigue is a primary symptom for you with Hashimoto's. You might come in with your fatigue at like a 7 every single day. And then after you do AIP for 30 or 60 days, you've been tracking every day and you find your fatigue has gone down to like a 3 or a 4. That is measurable improvement. You've been tracking it, you've been feeling in your body. Easier if you have a condition that maybe has like a visible symptom. So like psoriasis, you'll take stock of like the percent of your body that you have a rash, or maybe like a 1 to 10 scale. That starts to go down. So you see something that's different. Not every autoimmune disease has something visible, but then you're able to move on to reintroductions when you know you have that visible or measurable improvement. Because then when you reintroduce foods and then you backslide a little bit, you're able to say, oh, I know that food is the thing that caused that symptom for me. And so that is a part of the reintroduction process, which is the final phase. But you kind of can't move on to reintroductions unless you have that measurable improvement. Okay, Hannah says, are there specific autoimmune conditions where AIP works better or worse? Now, we have a handful of conditions that have been studied, but autoimmune disease in general encompasses over 100 conditions. So I get asked this a lot. People say, I have this rare autoimmune condition. How do I know that it's going to help? The first thing is you might not. You might actually just have to try it and see what happens. I would encourage you, if you have a rare condition that is not one of the ones that has been medically studied, which include IBD, Hashimoto's, psoriasis, rheumatoid arthritis, then there's countless success stories online, and my website has a lot of these stories, Autoimmune Wellness, if you guys want to look those up. But just look in communities where autoimmune patients are gathered and ask other people if you have something unusual, see if anybody has tried it. You will probably find a story of somebody using AIP. And the other thing is, like, you really just don't know. Everybody is unique. So I have seen even conditions where 2 people have the same condition and they get completely different results. I mean, I have Hashimoto's. It's the most common autoimmune disease. It's estimated up to 10 million Americans have it. And Hashimoto's patients could not be different enough from each other. They're just like, we're all across the board in terms of like our diet and our lifestyle triggers and what works for us. So I would just encourage you to give it a try if you're a good fit, and see what it gets. So I am going to take a minute to tell you, if you're joining now, you can pick up bookplate signed copies of my new book, The New Autoimmune Protocol, by commenting shop. You'll get a DM link if you are on Instagram or Facebook. If you're on TalkShopLive, just click the shop button. And if you're on YouTube, click the link pinned in the description. Okay, Hannah says, what are the biggest misconceptions people still have about AIP? So first, the biggest one is that it's something you need to do forever. This is something that I absolutely do not want you guys to do. Once you've done AIP, I did it once 15 years ago. I identified my food sensitivities. I know how food affects me and my symptoms, then you move on with that information. So it is a process to go through information gathering. And once you have that information, then when you have a flare, you have something happen, you can fall back on that. So in the last year, I started having some issues because I am now going into perimenopause. I've turned 40 and my hormones are shifting. And that means a little bit of change with my autoimmune conditions. And so what I can do is fall back on some of that information that I know, which is nutrient dense, lots of broth, lots of like well-cooked stewed meats, fermented foods, all of these things that I learned really support my health. And then of course, all the things that I avoid that I know are not great for me, that are maybe gray area foods, I hold those because I already have so much experience knowing what really supports my health. So that's really the goal of AIP, is to find this personalized template that really serves you for the long term. It's not a restricted diet that you're on forever. And what's beautiful about the way that I think I have presented AIP in the recipes is that these are recipes that they're not weird. You guys can see like on the cover, this beautiful roasted chicken and vegetables. And I specifically put rice on the cover because I wanted to call out that modified AIP. This is not weird food. This is not food that your family isn't going to like. So even when you move on to reintroducing foods, these are recipes that I'm hoping that you will use for the long term, that you will come back and say, you know what, like Mickey's, chicken and black bean breakfast bowl. I mean, you don't have to eat this for breakfast, but I know people are always looking for breakfast ideas. This is just really good, healing, delicious food. Here's a roasted salmon with asparagus and cauliflower steaks, really high vegetable, high nutrient density. And I promise once you get these recipes into the rotation, you're going to be coming back to them because they are really easy wins in terms of nutrient density and just cooking in your kitchen. I also don't want you guys spending a ton of extra time cooking when you don't have to. Okay, Leah asks a great question. How do you decide whether somebody should start with core or modified AIP? So core AIP is not guaranteed to work better than modified. I think this is a misconception. Now, we don't have the medical research. I'm really hoping that there are some research teams that want to do like a head-to-head core AIP and modified AIP and see what works. But I can tell you from working one-on-one with nutrition clients and the last couple of years, the coaching community, again, those 1,000 providers who are certified to work with the Autoimmune Protocol directly with their patients and their clients, everybody is reporting that modified AIP has a very high level of efficacy, even though some of those extra foods are added in. And sometimes the reduced stress of cooking actually makes it easier for people to experience healing just because they're not spending as much time in the kitchen, they're not cooking as much. So if you're looking to decide core or modified, I would almost always start with modified unless you're somebody who has a lot of cooking experience, a lot of time dedicated, or maybe you have a helper, more money to spend on food because core AIP is more expensive by nature of the ingredients, or you are a member of one of the populations that has been studied. So like that IBD study that I referenced before, the people that came into that study had an average disease duration of 19 years. They were pretty sick, and turning, 73% around in 6 weeks is really fast. And so if you have IBD, it's been studied in IBD, you might just say, you know what, I just don't want to mess around with anything else. I want to try that. Core AIP might be the right option for you. But I really think that everybody else, if you're, you have an autoimmune condition that hasn't been studied, and cooking, especially like if you have a lot of fatigue, you don't have a lot of time, you don't have unlimited financial resources. I mean, who does these days to spend on food? I think modified AIP is the best approach for most people, and you're still probably going to get really good results. Okay. Okay, I answered that from Kendall. Okay, ooh, I love this question. Carrie, what's your go-to lazy AIP meal when you don't feel like cooking? Okay, so I have basically 3 types of meals that I like to have as a chronic illness, autoimmune person. I like to think in three different categories. The first category is a low capacity meal, which is exactly what you're talking about, Carrie, this lazy AIP meal. This is the meal that you literally don't have to think about. You don't have to clean anything up. You just have it. And the best option here is actually something from your freezer that you have batch cooked and just stashed away. So what I like to do is I like to cook like a soup or a stew. Let me see if I can pull up something in here that would be a good example of that. I've got a couple AIP like nightshade free chili recipes. Okay, here's one. This is my nourishing core chili. So this is a chili. It's got bone broth. It's got meat. There are no tomatoes in there, you guys. And what I'll do is I'll cook up a big pot of that, and I will put it in mason jars, the types that have wide rim. Would you actually hand me, pretty please, Noah, a wide rimmed jars? So if you are ever freezing, you can freeze in glass. These are meant to be frozen. This jar does not have shoulders, and you can totally freeze in these. And yeah, I've got a meal from my freezer. I think this is carrot ginger soup. I was bad and I didn't label it. Don't be like me, label your food. But what you can do is stash your freezer with a bunch of these recipes. So if you're having a flare day, you're having a low capacity day, you just pull that out of the freezer and you eat it. Another thing you can do is you can make a nutrient-rich smoothie. And I've got a couple recipes in here because, yeah, you don't really need a recipe for a smoothie, but these are tried and true. I've got a super berry protein and a cherry cacao. So on modified AIP, we have some expanded options for protein. So you can use pea protein, you can use hemp protein, you can use rice protein, you can throw some coconut yogurt for a little probiotics, you can use some juice. I really like cranberry juice and pomegranate juice for really a lot of polyphenols and for giving it kind of like a nice berry flavor. You could add some ground flax for some fiber. Now we're talking modified AIP. Core AIP, it's harder to make smoothies with enough protein. And this is kind of the exact reason why I think modified is better for most people, just because you can have some of these convenient options, throw everything into a blender. You have enough fiber, protein, fat. It's a complete meal. Back in the days of when there was only core AIP, I mean, it's really hard to just come up with a high protein meal just like that, right? So yeah, a smoothie is a really good lazy AIP meal. I also have a buckwheat breakfast porridge in this book that you can make. You can batch cook. It makes 4 servings, and you can make, pre-make it and then put it in the fridge, and then in the morning just add a little bit hot water, stir it up with some fruit or some coconut yogurt. That's a really easy, lazy, already done for you type of thing. And then the last thing I would say are salads with like a tin of fish. So like sardines, mackerel, those you don't have to cook them. Oh, that's my cookies. Okay, I'm just gonna take a look at them. They need 2 or 3 more minutes. You can just throw a tin of fish. And if chopping and prepping your greens is a lot for you, sometimes what I will do is pre-purchase like already bagged and chopped greens and having a dressing ready to go. So they just kind of mix everything together and have a nice meal that way.
What were the other 2 types of meals though? You did with
Oh yeah. Thanks for helping me. Okay, so that's a low capacity meal. Then I like to think in terms of medium capacity meals. These are like 15 to 30 minute meals. I've got probably 30% of the recipes in here are like that, which is just a really quick, throw together. Okay, here's a spiced pork skillet, something where you're just gonna have some vegetables, a little root vegetable, a little meat, a little, seasoning, and throw that all into one pan or skillet, ready to go. And then the third type of meal is kind of like a higher capacity day. So this is something that I'll do when I am batch cooking on the weekend. This is when I'm feeding into the frozen food in the jars, my collection in the freezer, which, by the way, you kind of want to eat your frozen food within 3 months if you want it to taste good. I will say that I have eaten things far longer than that from a food safety perspective. It's fine. It's just your vegetables are going to get a little texturally not the same. But using your freezer is a really great way to then, cook up a bunch of batch of food. And if you're somebody that doesn't have the capacity or the ability to do your own batch cooking sessions, I would encourage you to invite a helper to come in, pick out some recipes from the book, and spend some quality time together. That's something that I wish that I had done more when I was sick. I had so many friends who were saying, is there anything we can do? Is there anything we can do? And I wish that I would have normalized like having a batch cooking party, having people come over, do a bunch of cooking together, and then just stash my freezer so that I had some easy food. Actually, I think this is what I had in the freezer earlier, that roasted roots, root vegetable puree soup. So yeah, lots of ideas in here for all three types of those. Okay. Let's see. Okay, Pam says tips for staying AIP while traveling or eating out. So again, modified AIP is going to be way easier if you are traveling or eating out. Eating out is definitely a challenge when you are in the elimination phase, but it is doable. So some things that I like to do is make sure that I have the ability to prepare my own picnic. Sometimes I call it like my picnic style meal. I'll go to a grocery store. I'll get things like rotisserie chicken. I might get some smoked salmon. I might get some lunch meat. You can find usually some bottled dressings that are very simple. If you can't find something that is compliant, you can just do some plain oil, vinegar, and salt. Okay, I got to check on the cookies again. Those still need another 2 minutes. They were wetter than normal. And then if you have a mini fridge, I will usually go straight to a grocery store. I'll pick out a few picnicky style things, and I will usually eat in my hotel room or Airbnb. If you can get an Airbnb that has the ability, to have some pots and pans, make sure to message them ahead of time, because I've definitely been in a lot of places where they didn't really have a good setup. I also have, when I've traveled by car, sorry, Noah, traveled with my own set of cooking stuff just because they didn't have it. Maybe they had a stove, and here I am with a car full of cast iron pots and knives and stuff. But I guess what I will say is, where there's a will, there's a way. You can troubleshoot that. You can bring food on the plane. I frequently bring my whole day's worth of food when I travel internationally even. And it might just take some creativity and some pre-planning to make sure that you have, enough with you. When eating out, one of my favorite things to do is to search for restaurants that already service a lot of gluten-free, if not dedicated gluten-free restaurants. Restaurants that cater to gluten-free and even gluten and dairy-free are usually very accommodating when you're asking about other stuff. And so, sometimes if it's a fancy place, you can call ahead and say, hey, I'm going to do like an anniversary dinner. I'd like to inquire if the chef can make me something that's compatible. And so do some research ahead of time and contact them. And I've had some good success that way. Okay, so let's see. To find another question. And on a reminder for you guys, if you're interested in picking up a copy of the new Autoimmune Protocol, if you click shop on TalkShop, if you comment shop on Facebook or Instagram, you'll get a DM with a link. And if you're on YouTube, look in the description for the link to buy. These are signed bookplate copies, so they will come with a little plate that I signed ahead of time. Okay, let's see if these cookies are done. So these tahini cookies, what I am looking for, these look great, is try to show you guys without them sliding all over the place. Oh my gosh, this thing is reverse. It's hard to see. All right, so they do not look perfect, but they're going to taste really good. I'm just looking for some cracks. That's how I know they're done. I'll let those cool for a little bit, turn off the oven. And I will tell you that when you're cooking, it's okay when your food doesn't look like the pictures. You guys saw me slop together those cookies. Your food is meant to taste good. It's meant to nourish your body. And here, this is what they look like when I photographed them for the book, which is beautiful. but it takes sometimes. Actually, this photo, I did this 3 times.
Yeah, at least.
Might have been 4. Sometimes, it's hard to make food look good. So just know that if your plate doesn't look like this every time, it's probably because I took 3,000 pictures just to get that one. So, okay. Gina asks, how long should somebody realistically stay in the elimination phase? Amazing question. So let's talk about timeline, about all the phases. So first, the transition, especially with the new transition phase, I'm recommending that you spend at least a month transitioning. And that's so that you have time to pre-solve all those barriers I was talking about transitioning to the elimination phase. Then when you get to the elimination phase, I want you to do it for at least 1 month, but no longer than 3. The reason being that immunology research, so this is in food allergy and sensitivity, we know that the immune system needs at least 3 weeks in order to clear the slate and forget the inflammation and the response that you get from eating a specific food. Now, I recommend 1 month just to make sure that you clear that 3-week mark easily. So after 1 month, if you start feeling measurable improvement, you can then move on to the reintroduction phase. I will say that it is most common that 2 months is kind of a sweet spot because 2 things are happening when we do the elimination phase. We are removing food triggers that can cause inflammation and symptoms for you. Of course, all these triggers are different. So probably not all the foods are triggering your symptoms, but you're going to catch a lot of the big ones in there. And then the second thing is that you are increasing nutrient density because you're removing foods, especially things that are really rampant in like processed foods and convenience foods. You're replacing them with really high quality meat and seafood and vegetables. You're maybe dipping your toes into eating some fermented foods. The quality of what you're eating is going up so much, you're increasing nutrient density. And these nutrients are what heal your body. So those 2 things are happening at the same time. You're getting an increase in nutrients, you're getting a removal of those inflammatory triggers. Now, the nutrient density piece is why the longer in elimination might work. So that 2 months, up to 3 months, but no longer than that. By 3 months, you should be experiencing some positive changes. Now, you do not need to be fully healed. That's not like everything that's going to happen. What you're then going to do is start reintroducing foods. Now, reintroductions can take another 1 to 3 months. It's because you're going to take your time reintroducing foods one at a time and determining if they're causing a reaction. And from there, you're going to determine the ideal diet for you. Going forward, that's how you're going to eat. And once you start eating by removing the foods that cause you problems and adding in the foods that make you feel really good, your healing can actually expand over time. So this idea that you experience what you experience in the elimination phase and then things are just going to get worse or flatline from there, that couldn't be further from the truth. You can actually reintroduce foods and then continue healing as you incorporate some of these new foods. A lot of people are not eating a lot of vegetables, a lot of fiber, a lot of phytonutrients. They're not eating fermented foods. They're not eating high quality proteins. Once you start making all of these additional foods a part of your diet, you can start feeling better and better over time. So hopefully giving you guys a look at the whole process is really helpful. Okay, Michelle asks, what part of your own health journey shaped this new book the most? That's a really thoughtful question. So when I was photographing this book almost about a year ago, I was about to turn 40. And I had been smooth sailing with my own autoimmune conditions. At that point, I had 2 autoimmune conditions I was diagnosed with for about 15 years ago, Hashimoto's and celiac. And I had this new symptom where I was doing a photo shoot. I did 4 days in a row, which is kind of how I do the photo shoots. I make like Noah and I make, so I'm not going to take credit for this. He's a big part of it. But we would basically cook 5 or 6 recipes a day for like 4 days in a row. And then he would do the cooking, and then I would just be plating and photographing and just in succession. And so at the end of a 4th day of one of these photography benders, as we called them, one of my eyes started feeling weird, and that led me to, a week later, I had total changes in my vision. At the time, I had gone in, I saw 2 doctors that week, so it wasn't like I didn't go in, but I found out that it was uveitis, which is a inflammation in the lining of around the iris. And my vision was threatened. I had to have like emergency treatment, had to have my eyes dilated. I had to completely stop book production. I had to sit in a dark room for a week and really do nothing but talk on the phone with people and listen to music, because I couldn't like look at a screen or do anything, and really just hope that my vision was going to come back. And I'm really lucky that I got great treatment. I did. And that's actually the thing that led to my psoriatic arthritis diagnosis, which I've had symptoms of that since the very beginning. That was originally missed, but that's a whole long story that I won't bore you guys with. But that really shaped, I think, the completion of this book. It really came full circle for me, because having a health challenge in the middle of writing a book that I'm hoping will help other people navigate their own health challenges, it feels really vulnerable, right? Like it feels like sometimes like you need to have everything perfectly figured out in order to help someone else. But this is really something that changed my life when I found it 15 years ago. And honestly, those principles, those things that I learned, how to take care of myself, I was right back in it. I was cooking the broth, I was batch cooking, and really trying to work on taking care of myself so that I could put this out here and help you guys. So I would definitely say that that is the thing for this book. It didn't show up until the very end. I will say, like, writing this book just like came out of me. The recipes, at this point, I've written over 500 recipes. So I knew exactly the type of recipe. I knew I wanted them to be really approachable, affordable, one pot, easy, just beautiful flavors for people who this was brand new to. That all just felt easy. But then right at the end, putting it all together, I was really reminded why I do this work, and how much, how easy it is to take your health for granted, even when you know so much about how to navigate this stuff. So thank you for that question, Michelle. That's a really thoughtful question. Kelly, do most of the recipes require organic ingredients? No, you can use any quality ingredient that you can afford and source. It's really unrealistic that everybody has the ability to access organic. I think that organic is great for our environment. And, there are lots of, issues with pesticides and everything, but the participants in the AIP medical studies did not use organic food, and they achieved the results that were published. And I've seen time and time again people having great results with whatever they can get their hands on that qualifies. And even if you can't afford the modified ingredients, you can even further modify the protocol using the principles that I talk about in the book and experience healing. So I just don't want anyone to think that, this isn't for them because they can't afford it or because they can't afford all organic ingredients. Definitely try to make some changes from wherever you're at. And then also, Kelly's asking about budget friendly. I used a rule when I was writing this book. I would say 90% of the recipes contain ingredients that you can get at any grocery store year round. So there's nothing that requires you to buy something expensive online, whether that is like, a specific flour made from something obscure. I don't use anything like that. I don't use any tools. There's no pressure cooker or air fryer or anything required, just regular pots, pans, cutting board, knife. I'm not trying to make this too complicated. Okay, and another question from Jasmine. What signals show you're ready to reintroduce foods? A measurable improvement over baseline. Do not need to be healed. You do not need to be like the pinnacle of health. You just need to feel measurably better than you did before, which is why tracking is so important. I talk about it so much in the book. I have symptom journal pages that you can use to track. There are also tons of apps that you can use to track. The one that I'm using right now is called Bearable, and I'm just giving a little tryout. I'm not affiliated with them at all, but you really just need that measurable improvement in order to start reintroducing, and then you can start to figure out what works for you. Okay, Kayla says, how do you avoid becoming too restrictive or fearful around food? So I think in the beginning, in the elimination phase, it can feel like you're having to focus a lot on what you're not eating. You have to be very careful. You have to be, careful eating out, eating at people's houses, buying ingredients. There's a lot of hypervigilance. And I think that hypervigilance for 1 to 3 months, it can serve you well. It gets you through the process. There is immunology, there is science behind completely removing some of these foods. So it's not really something you can do like half of the time, right? You really have to commit to doing it for at least a month in order to get those results. Now, going forward, it can become a problem if you don't want to reintroduce foods. So this happens sometimes when some people feel so much better, they don't want to reintroduce any foods because they think something bad is going to happen. They're going to backslide and they're just going to start not feeling good forever. And if that is you, or if you have a history of eating disorders, or even if it brings up disordered eating tendencies, that's really a time that you need to bring in a professional and have some support. Because there's definitely people who go through this process, they take it very seriously, they are very careful. That is what I advise. And then when they come out the other side, they reintroduce foods and they integrate those foods into their diet and they start to see it as expansive. And then like right now, I have my few list of food sensitivities, things that I always avoid, but it's not a major impact in my life. I'm not thinking about it all the time. So if you're somebody who really feels like they need to control their diet, control their environment, you're really afraid of foods, that's a time that maybe you need to seek help. But going through, you kind of know yourself and if it feels like something that's serving you or something that is kind of turning into a bigger problem. Okay, I'm going to give you guys another reminder. If you want to buy a signed copy of the book, if you are on TalkShop, click the shop button. If you're on Instagram or Facebook, comment shop and you'll get a link to order a signed copy. And then if you are on YouTube, the link is pinned in the description. And I think I've said that so many times now that I actually said it right that time. Okay, top 3 pantry staples you can't live without. I love this question, Angela. First is actually tinned fish because I just love having a nutrient-dense, high-quality seafood. And for me, that is going to be mackerel, sardines, oysters, canned in olive oil. Sometimes I will eat the oysters canned in olive oil just by themselves as a snack because I think they're really good, but they're also really nutrient-dense and they're just like pure protein. What else do I always keep in my pantry? Probably coconut milk. I know everybody's can't tolerate coconut milk, but I just love it for adding some flavor and sauces. And then in terms of like flours, I really like cassava flour. Otto's cassava flour is the brand that I really like and the recipes that I use in this book. But you don't really have to do a lot of baking in order to succeed on AIP. So I would say those are my 3 favorites. Evelyn asked, why do some people react to safe AIP foods? So AIP is a protocol that is just meant to serve most people in their starting place, but it can't serve everyone. So if you are sensitive to a food that is included on AIP, you for sure should not eat it. So some people like coconut is actually something that this comes up a lot. A lot of people are allergic or sensitive to coconut. Coconut is included in both core and modified AIP. If you are someone who's sensitive to coconut, you don't have to eat it. And there's actually some strategies that you can use to replace it because I don't personally rely heavily on coconut when I develop my recipes. There's probably 5 to 8% of recipes in this book have coconut in them because I know how many people are sensitive. But like for thickening a soup or a sauce, instead of coconut milk, you can use like a thinned parsnip or like white sweet potato puree. It's going to have a little different flavor, but it will also have the effect of thickening and kind of getting a little starchy quality in that sauce or soup. You can use a different cooking fat. So if something calls for coconut oil, you can use a different cooking oil or cooking fat. So there's some creative ways that you can work around, but definitely don't be eating anything that you know that you're already sensitive to, even if it's included in the elimination phase. Okay, Jordan says, favorite AIP comfort food. I'm going to defer to Noah on this. You really liked the udon noodles. I have a, okay, actually, that's not really comfort food. The steakhouse dinner. Yeah, we have a,
Is that in this book or not?
yeah. Okay, the pork udon stir fry. So these are rice udon noodles. They are so fantastic. This comes together really quick. It's just thinly sliced pork and some vegetables and a really nice sauce that like reduces a little bit with some coconut aminos and arrowroot. I would say right now this is what I would pick, my udon stir fry. Okay. Harlow, how can somebody tailor AIP if they have multiple conditions like Hashimoto's and gut issues? So you don't really have to think about tailoring AIP to specific autoimmune conditions, but if you have like a gut issue that hopefully you're being treated for, so a lot of things like histamine intolerance, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, candida, I would hope that you're working with a practitioner. Sometimes it can be helpful to go through that treatment because a lot of those things need to be tested and treated by somebody who's qualified. Diet doesn't really take care of them. So you want to handle that first before you do the elimination phase because it's just too much work and too confusing to like layer too many things on together. Okay. Let's see. Alex, what's your favorite recipe in the book? I'm not prepared for these. What's your favorite recipe in the book? I'm going to make you come in here. Okay, he's going to come back. I'm really proud of this one, this citrus and cherry celebration cake. It's really good, you guys. And Noah's going to come back in here and show his face. Okay. My main goal is healing, but weight loss is a very close second. Can keto be incorporated into AIP? So I don't recommend layering anything when you do an elimination diet. So elimination diet should really be the only thing you're doing. The goal is to figure out which foods you are sensitive to and increasing nutrient density. When you add in like caloric restriction or a keto diet, it makes things too hard and too confusing. And so I would recommend that you don't do that. I will say that if you have Hashimoto's, there's a Polish group that did a medical study using the Autoimmune Protocol in patients with Hashimoto's. They did this really cool study where they matched the calories that people were eating before and after. So on their standard Polish diet and then on their AIP diet that was done with like AIP meal plans, they had the same amount of calories. They did it for 12 weeks. They did a body composition analysis and people lost an average of 8 pounds in 3 months. And it was really interesting because they did it by eating the same amount of energy density. So, you know, in Hashimoto's, there's a lot of things going on with like hormones and inflammation, but I would just say give it a try, just the elimination phase. Some people tend to lose weight if they have a lot of inflammation. There are other conditions like IBD. We saw the opposite in the AIP IBD study. People actually came up to a more healthy body weight because with like Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, a lot of times people get underweight. So don't try to layer anything weight loss related when you do AIP, I think, for the best results. Okay. Okay, Noah's coming in with his favorite. Oh, you have 3. Okay.
Couldn't decide. Okay. Love this one. Hello, by the way.
This is Noah.
Coastal Harvest Stew. I'm a seafood junkie. I love this one.
There's no tomatoes.
Delicious.
There's no tomatoes in there.
Thankfully, Mickey had to try this one like 10 times to get the photo right.
Apricot.
So
I apple crumble.
Probably 10 of these whole things by myself, and it's delicious. I can't get enough. And then I had to go with this Thai-inspired noodle dish because I love me some like
basically pad Thai.
Yeah, that's those are my votes.
Thanks, Noah. He ate everything all the times. So if anybody would know what's good, it's him. Okay, so Wow, you guys have so many questions. I'm feeling bad that I can't answer all of these. Okay, so actually, on that note, I do want to tell you guys, so for anybody who pre-orders the book and then goes to my website, which is theautoimmuneprotocol.com, I have a link to submit your receipt. I do have a pre-order community where I'm walking everybody through a guided transition phase in May and then a guided elimination phase in June. And this is something I've never done before. Everybody wants me to do these group programs where I'm like in there doing Q&As like this all the time. I'm doing this just for you guys who pre-order. So if you order the book before it comes out on May 26th here on TalkShop, click the link shop, comment shop if you're on Instagram or Facebook, or go to YouTube and check the pinned comment for that link. You send in your receipt to my website, and then I will onboard you into the community, and I have more Q&As. I'm going to have videos on the transition phase, and we're going to all do this together in June. So if you're looking for like a group experience, this is probably the only time that I will do this, especially for free, just for the people that are pre-ordering the book. So definitely check that out. Okay, so we're getting really close to time. I'm going to pick 2 more questions. Okay, Sasha, how did you design recipes to be both healing and enjoyable? Okay, so I've been writing recipes for 15 years. That's, a long time. I've written over 500 of them, and I've eaten a lot of bad things that I've come up with over the years. And what I can say is a good recipe for me is the minimum amount of work for the most flavor and the most nutrient density. So when I design a recipe, I'm not trying to put together something that is going to like win an award in terms of like a tasting competition, but it is going to taste really, really good. And I hope Noah can attest. He's over here giving a thumbs up. Yeah. With the least amount of work. So I kind of like to think through the lens of how little chopping, how little food sourcing do I need to like go to a special store to get all these ingredients. I really want to set you guys up for success and just finding ingredients in your everyday store that you can actually afford, and then have instructions to prepare it in a way that is just like not confusing. So that's kind of my recipe creation strategy. I really don't want you guys to have to spend a ton of time, but I also want to incorporate ingredients that I know are really nutrient dense and will help set you up for success and healing in your life for the long term, because nutrition is so important. Okay. The last question. Oh my gosh, you guys, there's so many questions. This is making me sad. Just how many questions. I'm so happy you're all here. Okay. The last question is going to be from Irene, which asks, how long is each introduction food used before another is added? And I like talking about this now because there's actually been a lot of research in IBD, which is not autoimmune, or IBS, excuse me, not autoimmune, irritable bowel syndrome. Irritable bowel syndrome, people are frequently sensitive to different foods, but then they don't have anything like measurable in the gut that is able to tell them, so they don't show up with like a food sensitivity test. So there have been all these recent studies showing with visual like cameras going into the gut, showing that when they apply like a food that somebody is sensitive to, the actual changes in the tissue in real time. And then that person will actually not get symptoms sometimes for up to 6 days after something that the doctors can clearly see, there's a food sensitivity reaction happening here. And so what that means when you reintroduce foods, those symptoms can show up anywhere from immediately to like a week. So I like to reintroduce foods 1 per week, which I know is really slow, but I would encourage you guys, if you're going through the reintroduction process, you can think about shortening it to about 3 days, but sometimes you're going to be layering on a bunch of food reintroductions, and then you might not be able to tell which food is causing a reaction if you start to get symptoms. So the longer I do this, the more I am a fan of 1 food per week. Of course, it's your process. You kind of get to decide what you do, but I kind of wanted to end with that because Really, the whole goal is to reintroduce foods. You don't want to do this forever. You don't want to be, this weird person that is just eating a super restricted diet for the rest of your life. You want to really be able to identify how these foods make you feel and how they support your health. And with that, I'm going to end this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Oh yeah, I get to eat a cookie. I'm going to show you my lumpy live on-screen cookies and knock over my book. I'm not going to eat it. I'll just show you guys. Tahini. These are delicious. They're really good. But you guys make sure to pick up the book. Check out my website, theautoimmuneprotocol.com, to submit your receipt if you want to jump in the community. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'm going to end this on Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Actually, I need a cookie. It's not ended yet.